So let's just return though. I'll get onto that a little bit later, but let's return to time versus money. So donating our money is typically worth much more than donating our time if you give the money to these most cost-effective causes. And I think this is quite surprising, and it's not intuitive. The intuitive idea, I think, is more the type of thing that would make a good story in a book or something, where you think, I'm particularly good at what I do in my job, so if I help with my job, that's probably the best way that I can help. It's just surprising that it's actually not the case. So it's certainly intuitive, but it's not really the case. There are exceptions to this, but in general, this is true. And as an example, most doctors would do less good by traveling abroad to perform surgeries than by donating a week's worth of salary. And if you talk to groups that do fly doctors around to do surgeries, they know this as well. But interestingly, it's easier to get a doctor to fly over to do surgeries for a week than it is to get them to donate a week's worth of their money as well. And this is true for most professions. But it's not always true. But when it is true, how can it be? I mean, it does, as I say, seem very counterintuitive. Well, I think this graph really helps to explain that as well as possible. So this is a graph of the world income distribution. So you might wonder, how is money distributed, or how is income distributed across people in the world? Well, if you get all 6.7 billion people in the world and you line them up from poorest through to richest, then this is how the income is distributed. And you can see that it's a very unequal distribution. If it was an equal distribution, this would be a flat graph. But it's very skewed towards the rich in this case. And I've done a dotted line at the top because this graph actually would keep going up. And at this scale, it would actually be taller than Mount Everest if you kept going until you got to the highest income levels. So it's just quite interesting. The data of this is available. You can look up the papers and so on. And I should add that I say here, this is the income per household member in US dollars purchasing power parity adjusted. That's what the PPP stands for. So this takes into account the fact that money goes further in poorer countries. So in general, I mean, if you're in India, it goes about 5 times as far. And so then the household incomes in India are then multiplied by 5 to take that into account, to translate it all into how a US dollar would be spent in small town USA. So what's particularly interesting about this is that you might imagine that you're somewhere around here or something on this graph. But it's probably not the case. Most people here, and I know I am in this richest 2%. Because what we're used to is comparing ourselves to the people in our own countries, and we're probably not in the richest 2%. But if you think about it on a world scale, it's surprising. And we've got this calculator. I should get onto this a bit later, but I've got a website which does include this calculator. And you can type in your household income per capita and see where you are in the world income distribution. And it's quite interesting. I did this while I was a student, a PhD student, on a AHRC research grant. And I ended up in the richest, I think, 4.5% of the world's population, even though all of my friends who had jobs couldn't understand how I could live on such a small amount of money. And then the website also points out that if you donated 10% of that, I would still be in the richest 5.5% of the world's population. So it seemed, while at first glance it wouldn't seem to be possible to give away a reasonable fraction of a student grant, I realized, well, actually, most of the world's population can get by on less than that. So it probably is actually possible if I really wanted to do it. So, and I should add that the reason I really bring this up is you might think, how is this possible? The reason it's possible is because we're very rich on a world scale. And it's not that surprising. If you think about if you imagine a millionaire who meets some very poor people and wants to help them out because they're homeless, and he decides to spend his time building a house for them, you might think that's a bit odd. Why doesn't he just give them money? That's what he would be able to do much more effectively. And this is this kind of case. When you've got such a large multiple of the money of the people you're trying to help, often giving money can just be more effective than direct work. So I thought about all of these things a few years ago while I was a student here at Oxford. And my response was that in order to live up to my values, I'd give away more than half of my future income. So my basic approach was to try to restrict myself for the rest of my life to a grad student income. That's how I decided to do it. Because I thought, well, I'm having a good time at the moment, and if I just inflation adjust that amount for my life and add in a small buffer in case, so I can save up a bit of money in case things go wrong somehow, I'm happy enough to do that. It's not much of a problem for me. I still have almost everything that's of value in my life. I have wonderful relationships and time spent talking to people, reading beautiful books, listening to beautiful music, walking through the parks and buildings. I can still do all of those things. So I thought, well, that's I would miss out on a few extra things, but you have a slightly smaller house. But that's not actually a big deal compared to these types of benefits we're talking about. So I worked out that over my life I'd earn about £1.5 million and that I'd be able to give away about £1 million of that. That's in today's terms, obviously. These numbers would be higher when you actually earn them, obviously, but at that point a pound's not worth very much, so I've just translated it into today's terms. And so I set up a society for people who want to join me and commit to donating 10% of their income to wherever it is that they think can do the most to help people in developing countries, so to help fight the causes or effects of global poverty. This was the idea. In fact, I had a number of people, I set it up because a number of people contacted me after I wrote a bit about this on the internet, saying, oh, how do I join? I said, join what? There isn't anything. They said, how do I do what you're going to do? And so I thought, well, maybe I should set up some kind of an organization. I don't think I'm the most natural person to run such an organization, but no one else was doing it, so I thought I should try to put some of these ideas into practice and make things a bit easier. So it would also, this organization that I've set up would run a website which collected and shared the best information in the world on cost effectiveness of different charities. So that's mainly through utilizing the World Health Organization and Centers for Disease Control in America and the World Bank, utilizing the research that these groups have funded on this. There are a couple of different projects, and those projects do meta-analyses of all of the different studies which are done on cost effectiveness of health programs. They get a very large number of studies together, and they take the averages and so on and look at the different cases and try to best put all the data together. They've produced these reports for ministers for health in developing countries. So the reports are pretty impossible to read for the general public. So part of the idea is to then share that information, make it more accessible, and produce graphs and so on that try to just make it clear what's going on, rather than have it all in more ministerial jargon, and to show how it's linked into charity, not just into choosing health programs when you're a minister for health. So the idea there was that it would be some form of a club or society for people who wanted to do this, so that they could talk about it with each other, and if anything was difficult, they could ask other people how they were coping with living on a reduced income. And also they could talk about advice on where to give and what's cost effective and whether there's any particular problem with a particular organisation who looks good on paper, are they really that good, and so on. To have this conversation. And also then to share a lot of this information with other people who think, hey, yeah, that all sounds like a good idea, but I'm not quite sure about this 10% thing. So there were two different aims, which I'll explain here. So the organisation is called Giving What We Can. And the two aims are to get people to give more and to get people to give more effectively. So the getting people to give more in itself is really split into two parts. One is to give a larger proportion of what we earn, and the other is to think about giving it over your whole life. So when you do that, like I did, and worked out that I'd earn about £1.5 million as an academic and that I could give away about $1 million of that, I'd never thought I'd be able to give away that amount of money until I actually sat down and calculated it. And I thought it was very interesting to do so, because I just thought, wow, I could lead to this level of benefit if I wanted to. In that case, it's about 500,000 quality-adjusted life years. And to put that into perspective, Homo sapiens has been around for 200,000 years. So it's pretty cool. So what you can see here with this graph down the bottom is just to show you that getting people to give more and to give more effectively fit together very well, hand in hand. So if the original small square in the bottom left there is how much people give and their current cost effectiveness, if you improve both of those dimensions, then the total impact increases as the product of those two numbers. So it can have a very good synergistic effect. So what was the reaction to all of this? Well, we launched the society in November, and there was a lot of interest in the news. And we had about 20 members at the time of launch, including a number of prominent philosophers and development economists. So Peter Singer was a member, and still is, and Thomas Pogge, Michael Kramer, various people who you might know. And since then, we've more than doubled the number of members, and we're trying to triple the number of members by the end of our first year, is the current plan. So there's not actually all that many people, but we're trying to achieve a lot. And here's the summary at the moment. 53 members from 8 countries. This is slightly out of date, actually. We've had some more members. And total pledges of about 11 million pounds, or about 4 million years of life, full health, from these members. So it's a small number of people making a large difference is the idea. Ideally, a large number of people making an enormous difference, I might add. So let's think about time versus money, again, to summarize all of this. So, has money won? It seems that money is very valuable. Now, not quite. Obviously, one thing we can do is convert time into money by working, and then use money. So it can never really win all that much in this sense. However, it can do even more than that. I mean, I thought that my time spent volunteering could never be worth as much as my donated salary. But then I realized that actually by setting up this organization and publicizing these ideas and so forth, that it could have actually a much larger impact. Because it seems like a target you can never reach, but then when you realize that it's actually a multiplier effect on that target of getting other people to try to do the same thing, then you realize actually you can beat that. I'd already raised more money over the last year than my entire future income that will be donated to very similar causes. So actually, time in some of these cases can be worth more than money. But if it's a particularly good strategic opportunity, then it can. And lastly, so to summarize these things, I said £2.14 is what it costs to get a year of healthy life, or QALY, and 1 hour of work, if you earned £21.40 an hour, as an example, would be 10 years of healthy life that you could produce in an hour of work. You can obviously use your own hourly rates. Or another way is 1 hour is of time spent promoting most effective causes or promoting effective giving in general. Could be a lot more than that. And this 1 hour talk, including questions, a lot of ideas, hopefully a lot of value. I think that if you really try to get these ideas and push them and see what they can do, then you can really make things very good. And I'll leave you here with 4 different websites. The one on the top left, well, you can't really see them actually. This projector's a bit dark. Is givingwhatwecan.org, which is the society website, which has all of this information, and it also has these giving calculators and things where you can work out how much you could achieve, and you could work out how rich you are, which is quite interesting, and see the world income distribution, and also see how effective a lot of different types of interventions are in developing countries. The one below it is my personal website, Miraclear. The one at the top right is dcp2.org, which is one of these fabulous reports for ministers for health in developing countries, which includes a lot of this raw data. And that's very interesting to look at if you're the type of person who likes looking at raw data. And the one in the bottom right is an organisation I gave £10,000 to last year, the Schistosomiasis Control Initiative, which is based at Imperial College. And they work on neglected tropical diseases. I gave another £10,000 to a group called Deworm the World, who are the only other group really fully devoted to this, which are based in America. So, it was quite nice actually, because that was the £10,000 that I'd saved up to donate while a student. So that was quite good. So do people have any questions?